And at this point, believe it or not, the mini model is done. And now we can actually calculate what the returns are, right? So now that we've figured out what everything is, we've got EBITDA over the next 5 years, our expectation. We're making that exit multiple assumption that's going to be the same as the entry multiple. And so every year we have our debt balance. This is what took a lot to get to, right? We had to really do all this work to get to our debt balance at the end of every year, our cash balance at the end of every year. And so if we're saying, hey, in 2023, which is our assumption, let's just go back. Remember, we said we're going to exit at 2023. If we said at 2023, we exit, so what's the equity value going to be at exit? Well, here we go. This is what we've been working towards calculating. It's really this that we needed to do all that work for. And we say we have $256 million in debt at the end of the year, no cash. So the money that belongs to the equity owners at 2023 is $649. Now remember, 10% of the equity, and let's just look at how we calculated this. It's not as simple as just taking 10% of the exit equity. The management is getting what's called sort of sweet equity or incremental equity, right? Because the baseline that you paid, management's not going to participate in that, right? So if the equity value is 640 million or whatever it is, and I've got the original sponsor equity is 270, that means the excess equity created, you get 10% of that, right? You don't get the whole equity because you're getting incremental equity created once the sponsor has made the acquisitions. And that's where that 37 million is coming from, just so we're clear. So it's not like 64.9 million in equity. And the equity value now that goes to the management is 37 million. The equity that goes to the sponsor, and of course, if there was any rollover, it would go to them as well, is 612. Since there's no rollover assumed for the purposes of this simple model, we now are saying, okay, we're going to get 612 million, and we put in 277, right? That's the initial money that we put up front. Well, what is that as an IRR? 21.9%, or a multiple of the initial capital is of the invested capital is 2.2. That's that 21% that we saw at the very beginning, right in that schedule. I'll go back to that summary in a minute, but here are the data tables where you can flex different assumptions to see how it affects these critical MOIC and IRR data points. Now, what you actually present front and center, is just the summary of all this. Okay, here's what the financials look like, and here is that 21.9%. And again, simple model, we covered it in a very short period of time. You're welcome to play around with it. But this is the basic LBO model that tells you, okay, based on management case, this is what we think we're going to do. And obviously, it looks okay. It doesn't look too bad if we buy in. Now, there's a whole bunch of diligence that still needs to get done. Okay, the last thing that I promised is that I would sort of explain the rollover concept. And so I want to do that here because it is in the model. And so the rollover concept says, Zach and the other management, let's say that they actually roll over some amount of what they currently have. So let's say, we think right now with no rollover, the sponsors have 277 million in value. It's a function of just the total amount of borrowing based on the debt capacity assumption, as well as, what is if you own 100% of this company, it's a function of, this is how much equity you actually have to put in to buy the whole company. You're going to own 100% of it, right? So if you're going to have to put up 547 million, of which 270 you can get from the lenders. You got to put up 277 million. That's the amount of equity you got to put in. So let's say actually Zach says, I'll help you out. And same with other management. Let's say, we're going to be 20% owners, and, so Zach's going to be a 20% owner going forward, and other management's going to be a 10% owner going forward. That means, you don't have to buy all of us out. In fact, if this thing is worth $277 million, so if you look at sort of the equity value of this whole thing is 277, and we can kind of go back to that by taking this 547 minus the amount that has to get paid out to everybody else, to the lenders rather, as well as if there's any sort of revolver source of funding. So let's just subtract that as well. So let's just get back to that number that we were working with. Let's say, this is how much equity has to go put in, but Zach says, 20, like I will put I will basically, you don't have to buy out everything that I have. right? So rather than buying out the whole, if I own 60% of this business, this is a slightly complicated concept. I own 60% of this business. You'd have to pay me $306 million. But how about instead of that to get this business? But how about I'm going to stay on. I'm going to be a 20% owner of this business. So 20% owner of this business means 55.4 million of the 277 in equity that you have to put up. Actually, don't put it up. Just don't. 55.4 million of equity value that you are going to give me of this 306 million, just let me roll it over. And that's really what's going on down here below. So pay me just this minus this, the 250, pay me that, and I'll be a 20% owner of the pro forma business, right? I'll be right there alongside you. And the other management says the same thing. We will stay on as 10% owners of the pro forma business. That means give us 27 million that you would have otherwise had to give us to buy out 40% of this 510. Save your money. We'll roll it over. We will roll over $27 million worth of value into here. So you only have to pay us 176 million. That's what rollover is, right? And basically what you see here now is that rather than the sponsor having to pony up 277 million, they only have to pony up 193 million dollars, because the rollover equity is enabling them to not have to put up that check. Now obviously now the rollover would participate, and the reason why we have this in a mini model is if part of the transaction terms are, hey, we want to roll over some of the, we want to retain some ownership, you can reflect that in here.